Welcome, everyone, to Red Spotlight Entertainment. I am Alexis Soto, sitting in for Kyle Lira, and I am joined today by Peter Martinez. And we're just going to do a catch-up episode for Mr. Martinez on things that he wants to discuss, as well as some news topics involving trouble with Deadpool 2, some brand new projects and scheduling for the masterpiece director Steven Spielberg, who was mentioned in the acceptance speech of Best Picture director Guillermo del Toro. So there's all the credit for you. And then, of course, which includes Ready Player One reactions and further projects. And then we'll discuss inclusion writers and the surging trend in diversity. We'll tackle these in no particular order. We're still deciding to see which ones we want to talk about first, and we may talk about other things because, yeah, it's that kind of show. So this is Red Spotlight Entertainment number 99, entitled, which has no relation whatsoever, but I'm going to call it that anyway because I have that freedom. And we are here, as Kyle would say, ladies and gentlemen. Peter, how are you doing?
I'm alive.
That's always wonderful to hear. So, I'm not sure if you have the chance, because I don't think it's probably available at this moment, but Kyle and I actually had a chance in the previous podcast, number 98, to discuss our thoughts on, the Oscar telecast and what we liked and didn't like about the show, or the politics, as well as who won and who lost. And then we also discussed about Jon Favreau and Star Wars and this or that. And I want to take this opportunity to ask you if you had any lingering thoughts, something that you wanted to say in regards to any of that.
In regards to what? Jon Favreau?
In regards to any of what I just mentioned. Any lingering thoughts about your feelings toward the Oscars, the ceremony, the winners? What did you like, dislike about it? Or also the Jon Favreau news at Star Wars. You take your pick.
I want to make it clear that I have not listened to the podcast between.
Well, because
I have not.
I just told you that it's not even released.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
why there's no chance you would have listened to it anyway.
That being said, it was a rather boring Oscars with a boring ceremony. There was nothing really that particularly interesting or that upsetting. For the most part, I was happy with the winners.
Which is the most important thing, right?
Yeah, well, is it? I don't know.
Do you like the winners? I think I for one happen to think, regardless of how you feel about whether or not you were entertained by the show and the production and everything about it, wouldn't you say anyway? I think what makes me the happiest out of that ceremony was that a lot of the people who won legitimately deserved to win.
Yes. I kind of said this, I think, to Kyle the other day, that when it comes to the ceremony of the Oscars at this point is basically for nobody. Because
you can tell by the ratings.
Yeah, it needs to choose. There's one or two ways that it can go. One, it just straight up becomes like MTV Teen Choice Awards, where it's just dumb blockbusters to get everyone to watch the ceremony, or they actually make it an event for actual film lovers and not these, 100-year-old men who don't even watch the films, but they're like, well, that movie's weird, I'm not going for that one. And it's, they go for the exact same type of films. They don't look at we both read that article from that Academy voter. Just came off as the biggest idiot in the world, who had put almost little to no thought into his votes and who he wanted at the Oscars. And there's still just so many picks and nominations that you could tell They were picked because they want that actor there, or because they felt obligated to. So,
Mm-hmm.
my feeling about the Oscars as a whole is, you can't be this weird in between that's not even an in between, really. Either just
Right.
go full, modern everyday audience, or take it all the way back to actually it being a celebration of film, where yeah, you're gonna have a shit ton of films that everyday audiences, maybe 80% of them they've never heard of. That's gonna happen because the best films aren't
But but
sequel number 23 to the Fast and the Furious.
but what you're talking about there, right there, don't we already have that?
In what?
Well, you were referring to the fact that take it back to where 80% of the movies audiences have never heard of. Um, I I don't know about you, but I think that's the kind of environment it is right now. A lot of these movies
No,
most people haven't seen. They
it's really
haven't, and
not.
if you look,
But it's again, this is why I'm saying where it's in this somewhat middle ground. That's
right.
not really a middle ground, because some of them it's like, oh, okay, that film or that person
Well,
obviously
okay,
deserves
I
to
think
win.
we need to make it okay. I think you're touching upon a lot of really great points here, but I think we need to make a distinction here because on one side I'm hearing frustrations with how they produce the actual telecast, the show, and then on the other hand I'm hearing frustrations with the Academy people themselves, who are the ones who actually vote for the winners, not necessarily the ones who are in charge of producing the show. There are two different things here that I think you're getting at, which have their own multitude of issues. What you're saying is here on the telecast and the production side, they should produce the show in the vein of a film lover celebration, not so much as this general mainstream thing. However, they themselves have to choose between that, considering what the Academy does. Your thinking is that they keep going for this middle of the road, when my mind is for the past couple of years, look, we had that article come out the other month where the vast majority of people haven't even seen the movies that any of the movies that are nominated for that were nominated for Best Picture, right? I think it said the headline was that these are the lowest grossing class of Best Picture nominees in years,
Yeah,
and
but
I think
it's
that
all the
itself is
films that your
indicative.
grandpa would go and watch. Most of them. I still don't think they're going for the legitimate best picture. You have a portion of them are like, oh, we need to
Mm-hmm.
be new and hip,
Right.
with a lot of the certain picks. Some of
Mm-hmm.
them are undeniable, just incredibly
Right.
well made films. They have to put them in there, even if they don't know
Right.
or understand the film. They're just like, well, everyone says it's great, so we're gonna throw it in there. That's where I get to the point where it's like, old people who don't under even stand these films, they just give them a pass because everyone who actually understands film says it's great. And then you have the films where it's just like, this has it's here because it's here, because
What are
that's
you
what they're
talking
supposed
about?
to do.
What movies do you have in mind? Because I, just to be clear, I'm not getting angry or frustrated with what you're
Hmm.
saying here. I'm legitimately like not understanding what distinction you're making because I don't know if you agree with what I just said with the fact that most people in this country don't even look at the movies or even know about the movies as it is right now. But what I think I'm
Yeah,
hearing from you
they
is
don't,
that
but that's not the whole enchilada that I'm talking about. That's a portion of it. Like I said, it's not just that they're already at the point where, oh, audiences don't know the films that are being nominated, so that they're only picking these obscure good films, because they're not. They're very much in between. I think there's a lot of rather not super mainstream, but films that audiences have at least heard of. Maybe they haven't seen it, but they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of that film. So they have some of those, and they throw them in there because audience. So a lot of them are deserving, but you could tell just the fact that they spent so much, and this is why you try to differentiate between the voting and the show itself, and I wouldn't, because I think they both have the exact same problem and they bleed into
No, I
each
agree
other.
with you. I agree that they have the same problems.
Hmm.
I'm just saying that not what I meant in separating them is that they're not one entity. They're like two different groups at that point.
To me, they're one. It's all the same issue.
Well, okay, I it's the same issue, but they're two different bodies of people. One of those people are television executive producers who are in charge of directing an
Hmm.
actual show, who select the host, who design the props and the awards and everything. Those people are not the same people who vote on the ballots of the movies that get nominated.
Do you know that they're not?
I think it's pretty clear. I mean, I think it's someone who was a producer on that. Like Jimmy Kimmel is not an Oscar voter, so and his team didn't vote in the ballot of the Academy. I mean, is there overlap? Probably, but I don't want anyone to get the idea that the people who are Academy voters, as a group, they also decide what the show is going to be like.
I
They're
mean,
not
no,
TV
it's not the
producers.
exact same people, but it's the exact same group. It
No, it's
yes,
not.
it is. They all swim in the same soup. They
Doesn't
do.
that
They
if you swim in
do.
if they swim in the same soup doesn't make them the same group. But we're not going to agree
You
on
want to
that.
rhyme,
But
bitch? I'll
just
rhyme
move
off
on.
right now.
From what I am getting from your take is that since they're already nominating films that people don't already watch, to just go all the way. So you want them to just go Indie Spirit Awards? Is that what you're saying?
I would just like the the films. It don't half-ass it. They're half-assing it in like several different directions. So then at the end of the day, the show is for no one because.
Okay, no, I understand
Mhm.
that. I get that. I believe me, I understand that, and I share your frustration with that. But there are several, I think, interesting arguments to be made on both sides because of that. So, we again to reiterate, and these are things that I said in the previous podcast, but in fairness to you, you didn't listen to that because you weren't there. But again, to reiterate certain things that people should be aware of.
Mhm.
Don't pretend for a second that these people actually care about what's the best movie or vote on what's the best.
Oh,
That's
they
never
don't.
been the case. And these are political award shows, not just on the politics that you hear the actors spew on stage, but in real it's not fake news, it's real news. That these people vote based on politics. And why? Well, why is it that you have these movie studios, not Weinstein Company anymore, but you have Fox Searchlight in particular, who spend millions and millions of dollars, or I think was it Sony or was it no, it was also Fox, I think, that spend money on the Post, which that was a waste of a campaign. But either way, all of these movies that are not that have people like Fox Searchlight behind them, or movies like the well, something like the Weinstein Company anyway, but they're not they're not there anymore. They spend millions of dollars on Oscar campaigns. These are campaigns where you schmooze with a lot of the people who are voting on these movies, and you wine them and you dine them, and there are parties and there are screenings, and there's like handshaking and baby kissing and a whole bunch of stuff. A lot of the pundits, and believe me, look, this is not me saying right or wrong, even though, of course, this very clearly this is not the way it should be. But I am only trying to paint a picture for how things actually are on the ground,
Mhm.
and this is what happens. For example, Allison Janney, I thought was good in I, Tanya. She only won that award and all the others because everybody likes her, and she's a really great impressionistic person, and she's likable.
You're proving my point. I know you were never
Yeah,
fighting. I
I
know you were never fighting against it, but like,
right.
I
No, no, no. We're agreeing. Okay,
yes.
let's just. I agree with you, Peter. I'm just trying to say, I'm giving you a status.
Well,
I don't know what I'm saying.
just look at the fact that Denzel Washington was nominated.
Yes, or what's his name? Christopher Plummer. There's a list, and we've discussed this, but I just want everybody listening, David, hi David,
Hey,
to
David.
get a clear sense
Hey, David, you want to
of.
come see Star Wars with us?
I think I already invited him, I think, or somebody did.
Okay.
Well, somebody will. I'll have my people reach out to his people.
I rescind the invitation then, David.
Well, look, I am just trying to give as clear of a picture as possible for people because I feel sometimes on a lot of these podcasts, no one goes out of the way to actually explain how things are actually like. I think I'm giving an accurate representation of how movies win and how they campaign for it.
No, it's absolutely
Again,
accurate. But
and I'm saying I don't like that. I don't think. I mean, as somebody who kind of a political animal, I kind of like the game a little bit, but again, that comes second fiddle or third or 100th fiddle anyway. The most important thing is that all of us, including Kyle, we unanimously agree on that these movies should be merit based. But at the same time, is anything really ever merit based? It's all just a popularity contest. One more thing I have to say before I give you the floor on this
yes.
is that it's very, very important, especially when it comes to Best Picture. A lot of people have this misconception that the film that wins Best Picture is the one that gets the most votes. That is wrong. It is not a popular vote ballot. If you want to have a comparison, this is basically the Electoral College and the popular vote. Why? Because they have a preferential ballot system in which we could have a situation like what happened last year. La La Land could have gotten the absolute most votes out of any film for Best Picture, but if it failed to meet a threshold, then that meant that the film that got the most number 2 vote ballots, like Moonlight, then that would win Best Picture if that met the threshold. And based on my sources on the ground, there were many Academy members who, out of spite, went out of their way to rank La La Land in last place and Moonlight in second place, so Moonlight could win Best Picture and La La Land couldn't. So there you have an example of a group within the Academy who are not voting out of what they think is the best picture, but they're motivated out of pure hatred for a film.
But again, I think you're absolutely correct in the picture that you paint of the reality of the Academy. And I guess that's my point.
Yeah.
Fuck the Academy. Because they suck.
Yeah.
Like, the voters themselves suck. Like the only way to create, I think, a legitimate Academy would to be get like genuine like film makers and film lovers within that category that actually take the job seriously, watch every single movie, even the animated shorts and the documentaries, because they don't watch those documentaries and the animated shorts.
They don't even watch all the nominees for Best Picture.
They don't even watch the Best Picture nominees.
The bare minimum. I watched all of them. I mean, if I could do it, so can they. It's their job description, literally.
All they want to do is schmooze with the Hollywood elites. And the public sees that, and they're disgusted because it's like at the very least,
love how
the public wants to see genuine, real, films that are good up there and winning. And it doesn't feel political. It's just the best films win in the best categories.
But at the same time, look, I agree with you. I think a certain part of the public wants to see that. But we have to be real here. The masses don't watch these movies.
Yes.
They just don't.
But the Academy Awards can't be for them. You know what's for them? The fucking MTV Awards. Because those are the movies that they watch. You know, that's why I'm saying if that's your goal, then just become the MTV Movie Awards. Then maybe you'll get everyone there. You'd have Snoop Dogg presenting. But if you actually want to be, have all the pomp and circumstance of what the Academies, would be considered, then you got to cut the bullshit. And honestly, you got to cut the bullshit about trying to include the what's it called? The everyday audience
blockbusters.
Movie. Yeah. Because to be fair, they didn't really do it this year. But with all the footage of like Wonder Woman and Black Panther, as if those films deserve to be on the same footing as so many films that were left out of the academies.
Right.
Um, it's ridiculous, I think.
Well, a couple of things. Black Panther is much better than Wonder Woman. Number one, get that out of the way with. The other thing is here.
Much is a big word.
The other thing here is there were actually okay. I get where you're coming from. I'm just because there were a lot of movies this year that, while not nominated for Best Picture, that fit the description of being a blockbuster that made money, or that were popular, but that got nominated for like Star Wars and War for the Planet of the Apes and Blade Runner. Dunkirk was a hit and that got nominated, as well as Get Out. That was a hit. That got nominated.
War movie
and then you
got nominated. Oh my god!
And then you have Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, again, you're talking about something that get one nomination here, a nomination there. There's your prize. Logan got a screenplay nomination, which I think we were all happy about that. So,
yeah. But that was a film that deserved it.
Okay, yeah. And I think all of the films that were nominated in the categories were deserving to be in those categories.
I don't.
Whether it be...
Not compared to other films that just no one in the Academy apparently saw.
So you don't think Blade Runner should have been in
Blade
visual
Runner
effects,
should have been in Best Picture.
You don't think War should have been visual effects? You don't think Star Wars should have had visual effects or sound design or sound mixing?
That's perfectly fine. First of all, Blade Runner should have been.
Well, that's what I was saying. I don't know what you were talking about.
I'm talking about other films and other nominations.
Well, that's the thing, though. It's like I'm having a hard time understanding which movies you're talking about, because at the same time you're saying that these movies were deserving to be nominated, but you're saying to the Academy, just forget about those movies and nominate other movies that people have never heard of.
I'm not saying nominate movies that people have never heard of, but don't overlook movies that people have never heard of simply because of that. When there are films that you could most would consider. Well, the few that have saw them, those people would consider those films better than what's getting nominated. You know, the only reason you're overlooking it is because no one knows what it is. You know, like you say, Dunkirk got all these nominations. If no one knew what it is, if it was this small indie film, they wouldn't nominate it for shit because, hey, that wouldn't make for anything interesting because no one knows about the film. And if you have to know about the film in order to see it, then that means you're pigeonholing yourself into only, you know, putting up successful films up there. And if you're only financially, anyway, and if you're only putting up financially successful films, then you're closing yourself off to a large section
these
of the
movies
film
were barely
media.
financially successful, though. A lot of these actually weren't financially successful.
They were all financially successful.
Not in the the sense that you would expect.
Sense, yes.
But as a whole, collectively, they were the lowest viewed movies in a long time.
Collectively, yes, but as far as individually, they all made their money. None of them bombed. I mean, if they had 2049, then you could say it bombed, but even then, it was a mainstream film with Ryan Gosling and Mr. Indiana Jones himself. So, all of them have star power behind them. All of them. In one form or another. And that's the sole reason why they're viewed. There's a lot of films that, and you know, because you've seen it and I've seen it, where, because that film got released at the beginning of the year, the hype around it died down, so that's why it didn't get nominated.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's beyond stupid, and that's what I'm talking about. Like, if a film genuinely deserves its nominations and what it achieved, then hype shouldn't matter. The film itself is all that should matter. And again, I'm only saying this if this is the direction that the Academy wants to go. If you want to go for MTV Music Awards, then yeah, Gal Gadot, Best Actress.
But I don't think they want to go that way.
I think they
though.
do. I think
Well,
they
then why
do
don't they? What's stopping them?
because they're old, crotchety men and they move very slowly. Cause this is what I mean. In like looking at the Best Picture winner, The Shape of Water. It's weird and it's different. It's a step forward because it's a romance movie between a mute girl and her sex fish guy. It's not traditional, but at the same time, it still is one of those films that celebrates classic Hollywood, and the Academy just adores films like that.
Hmm.
Adores them. So if they didn't have that aspect in the film, I don't think it would have won or have gotten nearly the hype that it did. I really think that aspect to the film is what, and it's sad because it I don't think this should be true, but I think that's what propelled it to where it was because the Academy, they need that. They need certain things to like a film. It's sad, but that's what it is. And the reason why it's that way is because you have the same old crotchety reviewers who are like, "Oh, that's kind of weird." Oh, look, this is a biopic. Great.
I agree, but at the same time, though, um, I don't think movies like The Shape of Water and Moonlight and Birdman would have won 10 years ago. And because I mean, yeah, that what you just said is that they're too weird. I know that they have the components and the elements of what things that the old white men are looking for, but at the same time, they have been trying every single year to include more people of diverse backgrounds into the academy. And I can't help but wonder if they're making an impact and an effect on some of these winners. Because
Well, that's my issue because
well, okay, I don't understand your issue then. Like, are you saying that the
I'm
mute
saying
people
they
are the
need to
ones who are
choose
in?
a side because this middle shit just makes no one happy. Either you don't care about all this inclusiveness and it's just strictly about the film, or you go full blown inclusiveness and it just becomes the MTV movie awards. Because when you're down the middle, the way the Academy is right now, yeah, they've made change. If it was the 1980s, um, that's how slow they are with their change. When you're down the middle like this, they're pleasing nobody. They're not pleasing me, who goes and wants to see the best films and no political bullshit. They're not pleasing
But
me. They're
all of
not
these,
pleasing people that just see the blockbusters and want to go see those films get celebrated. They're not pleasing them. So who the hell are they pleasing? They're pleasing the people in the room. And then they pat themselves on the back every 5 seconds during the ceremony for how great they are. So then people are just kind of like turned off. That's what's happening with the Academy.
what is shaking?
What do you mean?
What's that noise on your side? It's like something's moving a lot. Like it's creating a lot of noise. Like this rattle noise. I don't know if something's moving a lot and it's kind of getting distracting.
Do you still hear it?
No.
Oh, I don't know.
Maybe it's when you were moving. Um, I agree with what you're saying. I just I don't agree at the middle of the road movies because a lot of these people would never watch these movies. A lot of general audience people. I know, but then we're gonna go back to like, yes, you're right that these movies are the ones for in the crowd because they're the ones that make the movies. But at the same time, all of these movies were good. Like, and a lot of these movies were the best movies of the year.
No, I don't deny that. But I just think it was some of them. Again, I guess that I do. This is where I think like you're not getting what I'm saying, or you get it
I'm not. I
because to you, you see like, oh, a lot. They had a lot of the best films of the year, and I agree with that. But I guess my point is, it's half-assed because half of it is for a multitude of different reasons. The best films of the year also happen to be the crowd pleasers, like with something like Get Out.
mhm.
The best films of the year also happen to follow the the rigid type of films that the Academy is looking for, like something like I think Call Me by Your Name,
Mhm.
um, and then others are like The Darkest Hour. It fine, ridiculous that it was there in the Best Picture, but it was there because it followed.
That's their
That's
movie.
their kind of movie. That's
Mhm.
all it is. And again, with Allison Janney winning, I love her and it's great and all, but again, politics. So what I keep trying to drive home is that yes, some of the decisions are 100% correct and there are ones I would choose.
Mhm.
Others are political. Others are for the
Yes.
sake of just driving in viewership
Mhm.
of the general audience. And my thing is,
A lot of those movies they've never seen. Why would they think the general audience would
they
care?
are,
They haven't seen I Tanya or
but
I.
again, it's the closest they're gonna get because it has Margot Robbie, and it's about a big famous. Again, it's
It doesn't
it's a
make any sense to
biopic.
me. Not what you're saying doesn't make any sense to me. I think that rationale, that we're gonna use I Tanya as a way to get more people to watch the Academy, is completely asinine. You're already at a lost cause. No one is going to tune into this if they don't even know the movies. Why would I go and see an award show about films I've never even heard of, much less have seen?
Well, I'll give you
From the general
specifics.
audience, and from the perspective of trying to get more people to watch the show. Why would you think it would generate more interest when you nominate films that most people haven't even heard of?
I'll give you specific. Get Out, I think, was a big one.
Yeah,
Logan.
but there was also a lot of passion behind that movie too, not just for.
Again, I I get it, but that was one of the ones that they were anchoring, trying to get in the general public. Get Out, Logan, I'd say Coco for both of its nominations. Well, specifically the song one. Um, Dunkirk,
They love that movie, you know that.
they do love it, but it became kind of like a Mad Max situation where it took all the technical aspects, and of course,
Not really. Only won 3.
that's a lot.
Whiplash won 5.
Yeah, but I mean, that's about music. The Academy loves music.
They love war too.
Yeah, they do. I'm surprised, you know, Dunkirk actually didn't get more. Um, they're just predictable, I feel.
Oh yeah. No one's denying that.
But predictable not
Um,
in, well, these are the best films of the year, so obviously they're going to pick them. They're predictable and, well, they like this genre of film, so this should win. And what I mean, I don't think they should be inclusive. I don't mean that they should just pick um strange foreign films that no one's ever heard of. I mean, they should pick the films that justly deserve it, regardless of what kind of film they are. So
that's never gonna
instead of
happen.
having
That's never gonna
five
happen.
biopics and all of them are like average or just okay, good films, how about have a comedy that's actually a genuinely amazing film?
I agree, 100%. I don't think that's ever gonna happen.
Yeah.
Do want to make sure though, not to pick on biopics. I love that genre,
No, I
but
love it too, but I mean, we all know.
yeah, we
So
all
does
know.
the Academy. I guess that's my
Right.
point. I love every genre of film except
Metallica.
concert films.
Yeah. Metallica is my least favorite genre of movie
Ever.
because apparently that's considered a movie anyway.
Oh.
Any of them. All right. So that's about it.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think about inclusion writers? And did you see the speech Frances McDormand gave for accepting Best Actress?
Oh yeah, I
Um,
saw that.
and so basically, what's been happening in the past couple of days is that people. It began, I think, with the speech by Frances McDormand when she closed her speech by saying inclusion writer. And then that created this newfound interest about what that actually meant. So people like Michael B. Jordan, Ben Affleck, and Matt Damon, of course, those two would do it because they're in the hot water. Paul Feig and other people have come out and said that their production companies are now going to implement inclusion writers. And what inclusion writer means basically is that there should be requirements in contracts that provide for gender and racial diversity.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to get your thoughts on the speech that Frances gave and how she brought attention to that. Whether or not you agree with the whole notion of inclusion writer, and if you don't, what would you recommend instead?
Frances McDormand is a character. She's great. She's one of the people that I do absolutely think she deserved to win. Um, Inclusion writers in a perfect world. I guess it's like that's good. You know, I'm someone that loves diversity and I love inclusion. Well, you know, me sappy liberals. Those they're the worst, aren't they? But and me and you are one of them. But I struggle with it mainly because okay, what if you're making a film um and you're shooting in Ireland and it's necessary to the film that you know it's an all white cast. And it's not because they hate other races or anything. It's just it's necessary to the story that they're telling that it is an all white cast.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do then? Really? Because if there's an inclusion writer within the contract of that film, it's like I only picked Ireland because I assume it's like a 99% population of white. You know, the people that live there are white. So it's like even behind the scenes, the people that you hire are obviously probably going to be local. So what do you do? And I think those are questions that do need to be asked. You know, how practical is it? But on the other hand, I remember during the Oscars so white thing, I think my issue was it's dumb to argue that you need to nominate more people of color or women or Latinos or anybody of a minority. What you really need to be getting into is the hiring, not the nominating of, you know,
Right,
awards.
and
It's the
isn't
hiring.
this what that goes into then?
Yes,
This
it
is
does.
the
It
contracts
does
and the hiring
address that.
process.
Yes.
And this is where it should start,
Y-
really.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Instead of, you know, let's say you're producing the next action flick and only imagining, you know, that grizzled mid-30s white dude with like 5 o'clock shadow. Um, why not an Asian dude, you know? Why not? Because if I just say action hero to you, don't you think of a white male
Yeah.
mid-30s? Just because that's the way it's always been. So I don't think there's anything wrong, and I actually encourage diversity in casting because guess what? You find new talent, you
Mm-hmm.
find new voices, and you get a lot of new interesting art, which is what it's all about.
But then there's also the issue of whitewashing, which has been getting worse and worse, right? In terms of, like, you know, a lot of people were complaining about Tilda Swinton being cast as the Ancient One when that character, I believe, is of Asian descent or
Yes.
something. And people were
Well,
complaining. Then
there's also
also,
political
Natalie,
issues with it.
Natalie, yeah, of course, Natalie Portman, I think apparently the character she played in Annihilation, because it's based off a novel, that apparently her character was not white.
But again, see, this is
and to be clear, I'm just bringing
I
up
know,
examples.
I
That
know.
is not me
I'm
saying
not attacking
here. Okay.
specifically with Annihilation.
But attack me all you want. I just want to make sure I'm not misunderstood, because sometimes I can be very easily taken out of context.
I don't think you're taken out of context. I think you do not think, and then you say some things.
I'm taking that out of context, and then people reiterate them out of context.
Okay.
So I provide context.
All right. That's swell. When it comes to Natalie Portman and Annihilation, the first book literally does not describe what ethnicity they are. It is.
I do want to add, though, she did say. I do want to add, though, that she did say, because apparently this was an interview where she found out the person who was conducting the interview let her know that her character wasn't white, and she was like, I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, if I had known that, which I don't know how you would not know that at that point. Anyway, that she would have probably bowed out of the race, which I don't know if that's true, but I mean that's what she said.
I guess this is the thing. I like directors and artists having creative freedom, to create what they want. And guess what? Sometimes they're like, want to change the race up, or want to change this, or want to change that. Because honestly, and I'm that way either or, If you change what is predominantly a straight white male character to female black, let's say she's lesbian, I'm like, okay, if you have a story reason, if it works within the film, go right ahead, not knock your socks off. So for me, and maybe this is selfishly, looking at it from an artistic point of view, I don't want directors and artists making these films to be put in a box and say like, ooh, we need to add one person of Latino descent
so we can make this movie. But at the exact same time, you also are sensitive and are supportive of more diversity in film in general.
Well,
and I think therein lies. Yeah,
I wanted to use a specific example where, and like I said, we're liberal, but we're not like sensitive, I think, to a lot of things that would be considered sensitive to liberals. But when I saw Exodus, Gods and Kings, that was the Ridley Scott Moses film, I was just so taken out of the film by how the entire cast was just a bunch of white dudes. Like, it really took me out of the film. You had Batman playing Moses. You had what's her name? From Alien. Do you remember the lead actress's name? Sigourney Weaver. She played an Egyptian. Like, and I think Ridley Scott said something like, well, to get a movie financed, I can't get, just some, no name ethnic actor. I need to get mainstream actors. And then that's where I look at the inclusion writer and I'm like, well, maybe now it makes sense,
But then if we're going to go ahead about getting the money to make this movie, then we're just blowing the door down on so many other issues.
Yeah.
Because getting a movie financed is in and of itself a whole podcast all of its own, really. Like, I mean, again, we're just touching on these small things. It's like Black Panther. We're only just, touching on small issues, but we're not really going to dive deep into the actual issues because they're just so complex, especially when it comes to getting a movie financed. And then I couldn't get this movie made if I hired the people.
But isn't that an issue
and
that
everything?
you can only hire white? I mean, if exclusion writers can stop another Exodus, Gods and Kings from happening, that's awesome.
I would have used the example. Of one of the remake remedies in which Kyle whitewashed Aladdin. But and
what's funny is he didn't realize it. Like.
We were there, right? So it's not unfair to say that. Like, I think you even said it like live in real time when
Because
that was happening.
I thought it was a joke at first. Because
What?
I always treat those remake remedies as a joke, and I always try to make some social
He
commentary
doesn't
as
though.
well.
You understand that he
No, he
didn't
took it
intend it to be a
seriously.
joke. He did. Like, did that really surprise you?
Who did he have? He had Benedict Cumberbatch.
The four of us.
As
I thought okay. Benedict Cumberbatch.
like the most whitest British name in the world, and he wanted him as Jafar. Oh my gosh. Like that. Like I would hate to see that film. That would be terrible.
But I mean, this is the same person that recommended a young Princess Leia story with Millie Bobby Brown starring in it, directed by Patty Jenkins. I could feel your face just start to cringe when I bring you back to that, because I think, and yet you really, really were sickened when Kyle suggested. I remember that day very clearly.
To be fair, the way Star Wars fans are right now, that's probably something that they would endorse.
Kevin Smith should direct a Star Wars movie. Remember that one?
Kevin Smith. I love Kevin Smith. He should never
Yes.
touch Star Wars.
I hope he gets better.
Oh yeah,
After his heart attack and
Great
everything,
guy.
which was really scary. There was more things I wanted to say about this issue. Look, I understand your concerns, I really do. But another component to this is, with the success of Wonder Woman and Black Panther, and again, there's superhero movies. Again, there are already movies that are made for finance. And of course, it's not transferable to everything because, as you pointed out, and I think as we pointed out in real time when we reviewed Annihilation, that is a female-led driven movie.
that's what you
Gets
should
no
have been
bonus
supporting
points.
right there.
He gets no bonus
Ridiculous.
points for having that whatsoever. Nobody saw it at all because they were too busy watching Black Panther for the 5th time. Which, as somebody who is a company person, I thank every one of those people for doing so. Because I get paid more every time you go see Black Panther, which just crossed $1 billion worldwide.
You know,
so
for a neoliberal, geez, are you a capitalist?
you know, I think life is a bag of contradictions, Peter. And, I'm not necessarily sure it's fair to characterize or paint something with one brush. So
That's true.
because we all have different shapes and colors.
That's absolutely true. Because, as we all know, with you, it's not about business; it's about religion.
It's about business.
About religion.
It's about life. But I'm also wondering, though, could Hollywood be starting to see that perhaps... Because, I mean, aside from the fact that Wonder Woman and Black Panther were built to make money regardless, there was a drive between the individual communities to mobilize and go see this film.
Oh, absolutely. And
Is that a model for future films, or Hollywood is noticing that this is beginning to make money? I don't know how Love, Simon will do, but that's also one where it's like a conventional film, plays it safe, but it is a straight white actor playing a white gay male, which is something that hasn't been seen in the kind of general audiences. Like, again, not speaking to the quality of the film, but that's something that we're going to be seeing more and more of, that caters to different kinds of marginalized group of people.
absolutely, and I think it's great.
Like Coco. Coco's another one of those that could be considered that as well.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I would just argue that we not let the celebration of diversity blind us to the quality of the films.
Wouldn't A Wrinkle in Time be proof to that? Because it was just so bad you couldn't defend, apparently.
Yeah, but
A Wrinkle in
if it
Time,
was just
directed by...
a little bit better,
right.
they would have found a way.
Right.
I think.
Directed by Ava DuVernay, a woman of color, and then also a primarily female cast on that one as well, with Oprah Winfrey.
Come on, you got Oprah.
Yeah, so... yeah, that's also something else to consider. I want to tail back real quick. A couple of things I wanted to say to you, and I mentioned this in the last podcast. It is a powerful thing, diversity. Something, and again, not that it should overshadow the quality of a film.
Yeah.
But I do think it was, as somebody who is part of the community that Coco is representative of, I felt very proud the Academy night for the wins that it had, especially seeing the faces of Oscar Isaac and Gael Garcia Bernal and Guillermo del Toro, who were so happy and proud of their country of origin for that film having won. Latino America, Viva Mexico. And then, of course, I know you and I are very happy to see not only Guillermo win Best Director, but Best Picture. I think for me anyway, I was most happy for him, and you can tell how happy he was, and how everybody in the audience was just so happy for him because it was long overdue. And as far as directing is concerned, I would say is deserving.
Like you talk about Coco. I really liked Coco. I put it in my top 10 of the year. Favorite films, not best films.
According to the canon of Red Spotlight, there is a podcast called Peter Loves Coco. So there you go.
Well, we'll do the special edition and retcon it. But no, like I guess my thing is a lot of the things that people are like, yes, this is awesome, diversity. I'm looking at it and I'm being like, yeah, that's nice. And then there's other things that people don't pay as much attention to, and I'm like, this is awesome, you know? Like for me, a lot, like you said, you celebrated Coco, and I saw a lot of people celebrating Coco, and I was like, yeah, that's nice. But the thing that I really just was like, this is awesome, is not only the fact that Guillermo won Best Director, but like out of the past 5 years, I think 4 of the winners have gone to Mexican directors.
I was there too. That's why I said Coco and Guillermo in the same vein, because they're all it's Mexico. It's Mexican immigrants. It's that country getting a spotlight, which is continuously with the past couple of years with Alejandro González Iñárritu and Alfonso Cuarón winning Best Director, and in some cases Best Picture. I think he won Best Picture for Birdman too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, for Birdman. But
of course, how could I forget that? Of course, Alexis, you'll never forget that.
You'll never forget it.
Continue, Peter. Continue.
But to me, what I find touching about that is that, you know, they weren't put in the spotlight because, Shape of Water, yes.
Red Spotlight.
They weren't put in the red spotlight simply because they're Mexican. They were put in the spotlight because of their immense talent. And, you know, their Mexican heritage was just a part of what, you know, made them so talented. And I think that's wonderful, and I really like that. And that's why also, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, my God, Black Panther. And I'm like, it was an all right film. I totally love the fact that people are really embracing the cultural aspects of it and really just connecting with it. But for me, what I thought was incredible was Get Out, you know. That told
again because by an African American writer and director, which, by the way, one of the best moments of the night was Jordan Peele getting on that stage and winning for Best Original Screenplay.
Absolutely. And to me, that's one of those things where you would not have that story if it wasn't for a person of color, you know, creating that. No other individual could create that story and create the themes and messages that film touches on and execute it so well. Right. So to me, like that is really awesome to me when I see that.
But I mean, there's different ways to look at it. Obviously, I know that with Patty Jenkins and with Ryan Coogler, they themselves were very highly praised for directing films that were, you know, indicative and I guess highly representative of their own communities. But in the case of Coco, I will say, though, I'll make a stronger case for Coco. I think is superior to both Black Panther and Wonder Woman. I wouldn't lump Coco with
I
the
wouldn't
other
either.
two.
I do think it's a better film.
Because, and I also want to point out the 3 people behind the scenes who were responsible for getting Coco to being what it was. And the diversity between these 3 people, you had Darla Key Anderson, who's leaving Pixar, which was really a shock. I don't know if you heard that recently, but she's leaving Pixar after 20 years.
Why is that?
To pursue her own entrepreneurial ventures, I think, is what she said. But she's leaving. But again, I mean, she got up there and she thanked her wife, which I had no idea she, you know, was lesbian or part of LGBT. And then also when you have Adrian Molina, who is Hispanic but then also gay, when he thanked his husband. And then you have Lee Unkrich, who is of course white, thanked his wife, but
Oh, I thought you were gonna
also
say they're all
thanked.
gay.
No, 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 no. But I mean that in itself is like people of very diverse
Yeah.
backgrounds. You know, there's a woman, a man, Hispanic, white. But then also, what I thought his was one of the more powerful speeches is that marginalized people want to see themselves and that they shouldn't be forgotten in
Hmm.
society. And also to thank the people of Mexico for this wonderful movie and for accepting this movie. And I think it's also an important lesson that these kinds of films are not just mutually exclusive from people who are in that culture. Because if you look at what Lee Unkrich, who directed that movie, by the way, was able to do with that, of course, with Adrian Molina there. Um, it's not mutually exclusive to that a person who is part of the community can make a movie that is great for the
Hmm.
community or for one community. That's what I'm trying to say there. But also another reason why I think, even though maybe it's just my lens for why I thought Shape of Water won, it wasn't so much that it had the old Hollywood vibe to it, but when you really break down Shape of Water, is these group of displaced people who are put on the margins, who suffer throughout the movie, that come together and unite and break and help the other. So when you have Michael Stuhlbarg, who is the Russian spy scientist, all of those are marginalized people. You have it's my lens and trying to rationalize for what it was. Looking back on it, yours is probably the more accurate reason for why it won, but I do think it is a message of the movie when you have Sally Hawkins, who is mute, Richard Jenkins, who is gay, Octavia Spencer, who is black. All of them come together and help this other individual who is, again, on the margins of society. And that was also a very important theme that night. So, not saying here that's why it won, but it didn't hurt.
But yeah, but I guess my thing is I don't like having the feeling of, did it win because of its message or did it win because it was.
But that's never gonna go away. I feel. I
Yeah.
agree, though. I don't like feeling that it's not gonna go away. But then also, what happened to Three Billboards?
In the weeks coming up to it, you could tell it just started getting trashed by people because of its.
But it won the BAFTA.
Yeah, but again, it's all politics. People are like, well, it didn't handle race well, which honestly, I would argue that wasn't the point of the film.
No, it wasn't.
It
I don't
wasn't
know.
about race whatsoever. Um, I don't know. I still love that film, and I still think it still would win
I
Best
I
Picture.
love that
Hmm.
film. I love that film. I purchased it, and I do think it was the best movie in that field. I mean, I even went on Twitter and I publicly endorsed the film to win several
You're the
times, if I
worst
recall.
person in the world. You did this.
What? Just because
You
every
did this.
movie I happen to predict loses,
Yeah.
and it's almost as if whenever I declare something as going to win Best Picture, that's the moment it begins to lose traction.
I
Does it almost feel that way?
I hate you.
And I mean, I think people are thinking. I think you're thinking that I intentionally did this to see if the universe would cooperate.
Well, now you
Hey,
know.
if
With great power comes great responsibility, which I know you will harness like a toddler harnesses scissors.
well, I think with life comes great and abysmal disappointment, and I think I've had my own fair share of humiliating defeats. Maybe it's time to spread the wealth around, and I'm so grateful that you were able to join the club this year, Peter, with your wall of losers beginning to take shape.
How wonderful. How wonderful indeed. But I'm not. I will say I wasn't angry that
Again, no, I wasn't, because I
I was
like the
very much
movie.
happy
I
that
like,
it won.
yeah,
Um,
for him in
yeah,
particular.
Guillermo. No, but I do think as a whole, this whole diversity thing is a good thing. But
Like everything else, it has its give and
yeah,
takes.
it's difficult just trying to know exactly how to go, the best way to go about like the whole inclusion writer thing. I don't know if it's the best way to go about, spreading.
Neither do I.
Um, I think it's worth a shot, you know, to see how it turns out. But I do see some cracks to where it could ultimately end up hurting some film.
On the other side, though, it's also about time people began to try doing something.
Yeah. Like, yeah. So I think at the end of the day, it's definitely worth the shot. See how well.
Okay. Let's try and move on because we need to wrap this up. That was a great conversation. Okay, so Steven Spielberg.
That hack.
So, yeah, that hack. Which, again, was mentioned at the Best Picture.
But he wasn't on stage.
Of all the people who got a shout-out at the Best Picture, of course, it was Steven Spielberg. And Guillermo, I love you for that. You earned a place at my mural. Mr. Spielberg, his next upcoming film is Ready Player One, a film that all of us have been looking forward to, and it looks like certain reactions have dropped for it. Any thoughts on that?
Let me be surprised on your thoughts and the reactions of a Steven Spielberg
I was looking
film.
forward to this movie. But I wasn't excited for this movie. And I never doubted for a second it would be amazing because, of course, it's Steven Spielberg. I mean, of course. But I'm very happy to see that people are liking this movie a lot. And a lot of the people who have been, were given a chance to see the movie were saying that how much it felt like old Spielberg, which that's a tall order by any stretch of the imagination to say. It may be something that feels like old school Spielberg, but to say that it matches up with the quality is something that remains to be seen either way. What I don't like, though, is everyone seemingly like Spielberg's films of late seemingly only excite me, and everybody else seems utterly bored. Oh, it's another political movie? Boring. That doesn't get me excited. And then he does Ready Player One, and it's like, now this is the Spielberg I like. Let's give me more explosions and special effects and something like that reminds us of what he used to do back in the 80s. And to me, if you didn't like what he did or particularly care for what the movies ended up being, that's entirely fair. That's all you. But I just think it's a bit unfair that whenever he wants to do a Munich or an Amistad or a Lincoln or a Post or a biopic or something that's more standard that he wants to do, I don't think it's particularly fair to say, well, I'm not excited for that. But the minute he does something that is basically a blockbuster, well, of course, that gets me excited. That's my issue. That I know you're one of those people that just doesn't seem to be excited for anything he does. You still see his movies, and I think for the most part you still like his movies, but that's not the same thing as just being utterly and completely devoid of any kind of excitement. And I don't like this stigma. I really don't. Those are my thoughts.
Well, I almost don't want to, reply to any of your thoughts because it's both
Wonderful.
sides of an
Okay,
argument.
so what do you think of Ready Player One?
It's both sides of an argument that both
So
suck,
I recapped it basically.
because I do think that they have a point in the type of films that Mr. Spielberg has been making of late. While they are good, nothing has truly blown me away since, I don't know, it was the last one he did. Maybe Munich, but even Munich, it's definitely, I think, the best of his political thriller ones. But then also the audiences, and this is my biggest fear with Ready Player One, I just, no offense to like the world, but y'all dumb. I'm sorry, like it's very easy to make that audience happy, and the audience I'm talking about. Whoa, Mario passed by. Oh, wow. Oh, my God. Halo. This is so much fun.
That's what I was thinking, too.
And I honestly don't think it takes much, and this film already has everything to the brim with it. And these are also the same people who praised Black Panther as revolutionary and so many other films as this amazing thing. And I watch it and it's like, it's good. It's good. So I don't know. The one thing I will say though, when it comes to a blockbuster, when it comes to the reviews especially, if they're good, then it has a chance of being a good movie. A chance. If it's bad, it has zero chance. I think when you're talking about mainstream blockbuster films.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
hype can be overblown, but hate is almost never, not overblown.
Mm-hmm.
So
I just want to quickly respond with, I will go on record as I have again, and it seems I'm on an island all to myself, and sure, that'll be the case. I think Lincoln is a masterpiece. I think Bridge of Spies is great. I think The Post is great. And I think that's an amazing trilogy. And if you don't think so, well, too bad for you. I also do want to say, though, David Moreno, our, listener who listens to every single show, recently told me that he had the great pleasure of watching Lincoln on Netflix, because apparently it was
on
put on
Netflix,
Netflix, and he'd never seen it before. And here's great, because he told me he saw it because I recommended it so many times. So there is proof that people listen to what I say here and there.
I need
Anyway,
to talk to him because he's creating some unhealthy thoughts in your head. He's just blowing it up too much. I'll put it that way.
As he saw the film and he agrees with me completely. He loved the movie. It was amazing, and it should have won Best Picture. So I appreciate the support of the grassroots. I appreciate the support of the grassroots, and we're gonna move on to. They seem to be insistent that the Indiana 5 is his next movie. The people on the inside, according to Variety, that they got a hold of some people from his team.
Sure.
Spielberg did a recent table reading, which, again, he does these very, very frequently, about doing a biopic on Leonard Bernstein, who is a famous conductor and composer, famously wrote the music for West Side Story, happened to be a closeted homosexual in that time and age, so that's another movie he's considering. Again, West Side Story is another one. I think Kyle and I are looking forward to that one, because to see Spielberg do a musical is also fun. So those are just a brief glimpse as to what he's doing, but I'm sure it'll all be amazing, because he doesn't do a bad movie ever. Now, moving on to some bad news, or what it would appear to be bad news. Deadpool 2 might be in trouble. Do you hear about this?
Yeah. This one, it is troubling. It is troubling because you have outlets coming out and saying straight up the reaction, the audience screenings were a disaster. And it did not go, and I guess they were shocked by that. They didn't expect people to act that way, so now they're
Fox, I think, was shocked.
Reshoots and all of this to try and fix it, but then you have other reports saying, no, people liked it. We're doing reshoots to go make it even better because people liked it so much. I don't know. I feel like if someone saw my film and they loved it, I wouldn't go and do reshoots. I'd be like, they love it, don't touch it. It's scary. I think it's scary.
Well, it's scary, and I just want to make sure, and people are understanding here. So what happened was that Fox held a test screening for Deadpool 2 the other day, or the other week at this point. And initially, the people who were in that screening, it got horrible reviews. Horrible reviews. People didn't like the movie. And when you were alluding to, Peter, that people on Twitter who work in the film industry as reporters and journalists were saying that, no, that's not what I heard. And then there is the ensuing avalanche by outlets. I'll just go ahead and call them out, like Collider and Screen Junkies, that have openly and flatly dismissed these test screening reactions as nothing but bullshit. And I feel that's a bit naive to just dismiss it as people overreacting, because I think clearly if you peel the layers back a little bit, something fishy is really, I mean, not to, pun on the Best Picture winning Shape of Water, which you can also buy on Blu-ray right now. Not to put too much of a pun on it, but there's something that smells here, because first of all of this began with a horribly negative reaction. And if that wasn't the case, where did this come from? And then a lot of the people like Collider and Screen Junkies are like they're focusing on the what's it called? The small details about whether or not these people were actually in the screening or they weren't in the screening, because there was an issue of this one person who initially reported this, who wasn't invited to the screening, and because of that, he didn't sign a non-disclosure form. But then he took it down because then Fox threatened legal action against him, because I think Fox didn't like that. But then people on Screen Junkies like Dan Merle were defending Fox because apparently they don't believe that person wasn't actually not in the screening, that he apparently was, then he broke the law. So I think he's choosing to believe what he chooses to believe. But I think in general what's happened here is the reshoots. Okay, let's talk about that first. Is it highly possible, if not likely, that they were scheduled regardless of whether or not this screening took place or the reaction to the screening?
They might have
most
been,
likely yes.
But
yeah, most likely yes. But at the same time, we're less than 8 weeks away from the release of the film in theaters.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people have been saying, but it's a comedy, they can do that. It's not just a comedy. This is a blockbuster movie.
There's a lot of effects. And especially this film, you can tell. But even the original Deadpool, yeah, there was like regular, speaking.
They had a helicarrier.
They had a whole helicarrier. I think you should be worried. If you're a fan of Deadpool, especially the first film, you should be worried. And even if you're the most optimistic thinker in the world, this should not, at the very least, you shouldn't walk away from this being like, oh, everything's fine. Maybe this helps Solo. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think they'll take it any way they can at this point, don't you think?
Yeah. Absolutely.
No, but I think it's quite telling when you have people like, and I'm trying to find the actual thing here that I shared with you. There was a tweet that I shared with you about Robert Meyer Burnett, who was hearing some bad things, which, by the way, he's very forgiving when it comes to certain movies, so just be honest about that.
Yeah, he is.
But I think he was asking that from the perspective that he has heard that they made a huge Alien 3 blunder with the story. And it's testing poorly. With screen out, yeah. I think something went wrong, to tell you the truth. And there's also more things to bring up about that. We only have gotten 2 trailers of Deadpool 2, and they've been only teaser trailers, and most of that footage is not going to be in that movie. In both of the trailers. They only show like very brief montage photo stills of what's going to be in the movie. That's also really interesting. Another bit of a component to add on to this. I have to say though, I'm not surprised by if it's getting this reaction, and maybe I'm surprised by the extreme negative reaction it got at this stage anyway. But it's sad to say, but I think this may have been all she wrote the minute Ryan Reynolds fired Tim Miller.
You just have such a deep love for Tim Miller, don't you?
I've only seen one of his films. I have no loyalty to Tim Miller. I'm just saying, whenever you have somebody that gets too into himself, well, That's when bad things happen.
You know from experience.
Ryan Reynolds is not the director of this movie, never has been. But of course, everybody treats him as he's the director. And
it
it's
was
like,
his baby.
Well, then, but then you have a problem right there. No, I mean, yeah, it's his baby, but he's not the director of the movie. It doesn't stop with him. And I think it's a bit unfair for people to see him as a director when he's not, and then he's the person in charge. And then it creates this bad this miscommunication. There's no sense of real leadership. So I just and I think it came down to the central argument for why Tim Miller left is because he wanted to take it somewhere else. And again, what Ryan Reynolds apparently was in favor of, just keeping it the same way. And it seems like they may have made the same movie, if not maybe.
No, I don't think that's true. If they had made the same movie, I think people would be cheering it.
I said I think they may have made the same movie, maybe the skeleton of it, but whatever they inserted didn't work.
The reason why that's weird to me is because the marketing, I think, is still A1. I think it's still pretty fantastic. The last trailer for yeah,
but it wasn't really a trailer. Yeah, it was a trailer for the movie, but all that footage you're not going to see in the movie.
Yeah, you will.
So, I'm talking about Deadpool and
Cable, the Cable trailer.
No. I'm talking about most of those trailers was Deadpool as Bob Ross or Deadpool as the Disney stuff. That was the most of those trailers.
I know.
That was the majority.
But if that's the kind of writing and the type of humor that you have, I don't see how that doesn't translate over to the film, and that doesn't work.
Right.
Because it's working, for me in the trailer, and if that's indicative of what the movie is,
right?
Why would So I'm very interested to see what isn't working.
I also do want to say though. It's funny how certain people like Dan Merle are saying no, never trust test screenings, and trying to downplay this, but apparently everybody was jumping up and down when a test screening happened the other week for Aquaman, and apparently it was good news. So there went your argument.
Leave DC alone.
It's a double standard. How many examples? This is yet another example. Another freaking example of people just picking and choosing.
Let them get back up.
Okay. Me having any kind of enjoyment of kicking people when they're down is irrelevant in this discussion.
Sure.
It is completely irrelevant because what I am most concerned of is exposing hypocrisy and bullshit. And this is what I've been seeing.
Okay.
I'm so glad you agree. So in that case, we're going to go ahead and close out the show. Yeah, I'm tired. Thank you guys for listening and everything. I'm Alexis Soto, and this was Peter Martinez. You can catch us next time at the 100th episode, whenever that drops. And then also, we're going to be doing the audio commentary for Star Wars The Last Jedi pretty soon, which we're all very excited about that. You can also watch the Peter Martinez free review of Star Wars Rebels series finale on Fantasy Fair. And of course, this has been Red Spotlight Entertainment.
By the way, how I feel about Rebels is
Kermit and Tori Kelly will take it away. And remember that this has been brought by Marvel's
I thought that it would be
Red
better.
Spotlight number 99.
It really wasn't.
Thank you very much, and
Ezra
have a
is
wonderful
the worst
magical
Star Wars
day.
character.
Bye-bye.
Should I start? Why are there so many songs about rainbows? And what's on the other side?
Rainbows are visions, but only illusions. And rainbows have nothing to hide.
So we've been told, and some choose to believe it. But I know they're wrong. Wait and see.
Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me.
Wow, I wish I could sing like you.
say that every wish would be heard and answered. We wished on the morning star.
Well, somebody just thought of that, and someone believed it. And look what it's done so far.
What's so amazing that keeps us stargazing? What do we think we might see?
Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. All of us under its spell, we know that it's probably magic.
Have you been half asleep and have you heard voices?
I've heard them calling my name.
Is this the sweet sound that calls the young sailor?
The voice might be one and the same.
I've heard it too many times to ignore it. It's something that I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers.